All right. So we got a cool segment here. Predictions for the rosters for the Four Nations Cup. Nolan's going to go through what he put together for a preliminary prediction, or at least for where his head's at right now. Uh, Riley, myself, and then Nolan's feedback as well. And Riley, I think we talked about it as well. Nolan, I mentioned we'll go for maybe some like predictions, but then also maybe how our opinions differ. Because like, spoiler alert, and I'll just say it off the bat, you've got like the perspective where Tom Wilson's heavily rumored right now to be in the Team Canada conversation. I don't know if we necessarily agree with that sentiment. So for our prediction, we might have Tom Wilson in. For an opinion, you might not have Tom Wilson in. That's just an example. I'm not saying that's the case, but
Yep.
Nolan, kind of go through it, and then we'll maybe chirp you a bit. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, so first line, I threw Sam Reinhart up there. He's proven to show that last year was not a fluke. He's a legit goal scorer since he left Buffalo. Yes,
Damn,
sir,
Riley,
Riley.
take a
He was
seat.
good in Buffalo, but
Yeah.
yeah, I know what you mean. He
Yeah.
deserves to be there for sure.
Yeah. And then obviously McDavid, center, and Marner on the other wing. No Hyman on this team, as you see. Carter Hagee, legit goal scorer. Left side with Crosby and McKinnon. I think Marchand would be on that line, the Nova Scotia line, but might be a little too slow now. He's not having the best start to the season. And then put Brandon Hagel with Braden Point. Brandon Hagel with Braden Point.
Yep.
You got the Tampa connection there. A little greasy, can kill penalties too. Connecting kind of fits in with the Hagel vibe. And then Marchand, O'Reilly, Stone, three solid penalty killers, defensive guys, can play chippy, solid on the draws. Um, yeah, and then extra forward through Lafreniere on there.
Do we want to stop after the forwards and make comments, or do we want to
Yeah.
go through the whole team?
Yeah, let's rip through the forwards. I mean, Riley, if you want to jump in, the one hot take I already like a lot is the Brandon Hagel. I don't know if he's been talked about enough, and I think like as a point per game guy, just an absolute shit disturber. Like I think Canada could use that as like a matchup game against what's literally, in my opinion, a more heavy, like explosive offense for the USA. Uh, Riley, I'll throw your thoughts. Go first if you want, but I do think that aspect, I like the hot take. Nolan, just to clarify for the viewers and for Riley and myself, is this more opinion based, would you say, or prediction based on what you think is going to happen?
It's more opinion based, honestly, because you could go like an all skill team, but we've seen that in the past with Canada, the World Juniors, and Olympics and stuff. It doesn't always work out. You can't have like Bedard playing fourth line. Bedard's not going to be, you know what I mean? Like a good fourth
Yep.
line
Yeah,
No, I'm
center.
with you. I don't think Bedard's going to be on the fourth line for
I
this roster,
had
and that
uh
makes it.
I had
Yeah.
Bedard off of my team. If you put Bedard on there, I was gonna definitely debate you on that because he's struggling this year as a Bedard fantasy owner and somebody who I could have shipped off for a Dylan Larkin earlier this year. He is struggling. I do like how you had Konechny in there. I didn't think Konechny was going to be on here either. I don't know most predictions if they have him or not. I like Hagel, Buffalo Sabres legend, Brendan Hagel. Um, Dylan Strome and Connor McMichael are both making a case this year. They're playing out of their mind. And I think that fourth line looks super, super slow to me. I know it's
Mhm.
a penalty killer. I know it's a
Yeah.
chippy line. I do like Mark Stone being on there. Um, I don't know if I like Ryan O'Reilly. Obviously I got a bad taste in my mouth from the last time he was in Buffalo, but just guys that you left off that I have written down and where like maybe we could talk about where they would fit in are Strome, McMichael, maybe Scheifele. And
True.
Duchesne's been I don't think he would be on a candidate, but he has been really good this year. So I'm also glad you left Hyman off because I don't think he deserves to be there.
Yep. I forgot Scheifele. I didn't even see him when I was going through the players list, but I would have Scheifele over O'Reilly. Looking back at it,
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's
good
fair.
centerman.
I think I'm with you on that. I think that was my only main criticism is Shifley in there. I would say in terms of lineup, I know you kind of structured it based on maybe a lineup you'd want. I would probably, and this is like a hot take, but based on I don't know if it was the interview with Sid or both Nate and Sid, but I think Sid would be maybe willing to play wing. I'm honestly curious to see because of how many guys could shoot right in this lineup. Uh, I would maybe consider a scenario if you don't have the Halifax, like the Nova Scotia line. I think there's a scenario where maybe you put Mark Stone up in the lineup there, whether it's Marner or Mark Stone in on that line. So, like for example, if for Hag, like if you swapped, Stone with Crosby there, so you got the righty on the right wing, and I look at that. I mean, I don't know your thoughts on Riley, but I feel like that's a really balanced top six. Like you've got Reinhart, the scorer, on number one. You've got McDavid. Obviously, we don't need to speak on that. We know what McDavid brings, and then Marner, the playmaker. And then similar on that second line, where it's like you're not going to have too many goals scored against when you're playing Crosby, McKinnon, Stone. I feel like in that aspect too, like you could line up those guys against any line on the U.S. and they would
I
be dominant.
I love those lines, especially if you sub in Scheifele for O'Reilly. Like that fourth line, I think Verhaeghe fits on it better as a Marchand, O'Reilly, Verhaeghe. Um, why is he not? Oh, you're on goaltender. Um, even yeah, man. I do like those lines for sure. I mean, I the thing I'm most worried about, honestly, when comparing forwards to forwards against the States is those Kachucks, man, they can get in your face and
Yeah.
they can really do some damage to you. Like
But I
who
think that reiterates Nolan's opinion that Konechny and Hagel maybe need to be considered on this roster. And maybe that's why
I
those guys are picked over a Tom Wilson. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm picking those two guys 10 out of 10 times over Wilson. No offense, Wilson.
I do I'm not super familiar with. I knew Konechny is really in the face, but is Hagel really that much of a disturber where we consider him like in that kind of
Not lined up against the Kachucks, but Konechny for sure.
yeah, Konechny
Yeah.
could do it. But I do love that third line. I think that third line's fast, it's tenacious, it's gonna get some points for sure too, and be a
So
should disturber line.
again, I was going to add this. So two guys that I don't think either of you mentioned that I think are in serious consideration. Actually, I'll throw three. I think Stamkos has probably lost his spot at this very moment. I think both Stamkos and O'Reilly, to be honest, Nolan, were in that conversation. I think maybe both of them have lost. The one thing
Yeah.
I will consider, and this goes into, I'm fast forwarding into the goalie conversation, but it's relevant, is Doug Armstrong being heavily involved in the process to pick Team Canada. Does he
Yeah.
look at current or former Blues players? What's Robert Thomas's health status? Is he healthy?
He's back tonight.
There you go.
Really, I gotta
Yeah.
watch him tonight then.
So
Damn.
let's keep an eye on Robert Thomas over the next month or two. Second, Ryan O'Reilly is a former Blue that got obviously a lot of attention from Doug Armstrong, so that's something to keep in mind. Alex Pietrangelo, former Blue, Stanley Cup champion, another thing to keep in mind. And again, I'm fast forwarding, but Nolan, you don't have Jordan Binnington, I see already. Again, that's the goalie conversation.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But that is something to keep in mind. I do think that when you look at those guys, and that's why I still have this weird and odd feeling that Hyman's still going to be in the picture here. I'm hoping not. I love Hyman. I love the guy, love the player. I I've always stood pat that I don't think he should be on Team Canada. I get how successful he was last year. I get how he fits nicely next to McDavid on good nights. But at the same time, when I look at the Verhaeghes, Konechnys, and Hagels of the world, I think those guys would play very nicely against McDavid or next to McDavid on the line as well. Right?
Yeah.
Like you put anyone next to McDavid, they're going to shine. So my point is, even in Alexei Lafreniere, I like that take because he's been really good and he's finally broken out. But sorry, beyond Stamkos, the two names that I didn't hear mentioned were Suzuki and Tavares. I would actually say that Tavares on the level of the experience on Team Canada. Again, it's maybe a Toronto bias, but Tavares being a point per game right now and honestly has stepped up huge in Matthew's absence.
Yeah.
I do know from having those conversations and talking to different people that John Tavares is regarded very highly in terms of Team Canada management and executives that have been involved in the process. So some people don't want to keep that in mind, but that's something to keep in mind that we're guys like Scheifele and guys that might be more offensive. Tavares, like Scheifele's, we've seen many times he hasn't been great on the defensive side of things. Like he can be lazy, he can be a bit of a floater. Tavares has been good on the draws this year, good on better on 5-on-5. Not saying he's been great, he hasn't, but it's probably just a speed thing at that point. You probably don't want Tavares and Marchand on the same line.
I would say I was gonna say Marchand subbed out for Tavares to be honest, but yeah, I don't know. That's a sneaky little hot take. And I don't
Yeah, I don't know.
even
I wouldn't take out Marchand. I think he's a lock for Team Canada. But those are, I
Well, yeah,
think we're in a good
he's one of
spot with that.
there were six announced
Oh
or a
yeah,
couple months
Marchand
ago.
was the original six announced. Yes, you're
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, yeah.
that's crazy that he's in that group.
Well, I mean, man, it's easy to say that based on the status and current situation of Boston. But
He is a rat. He is a rat that could go up against the Kachucks too. Gotta
yeah.
think about that too.
So
So
my only other argument would be that Crosby is shifted down as a center and rejoined by Marchand the way it was in the World Cup. I don't know if I'd have that, Nolan. I actually like the lines the way they are. But I think Braden Point probably brings more of a threat on both sides of the ice and obviously in a top six role. I like where it's at. I mean, I like that third line. I think it may be a little bit controversial for some people, but uh my third line was actually, again, this is maybe more on a basis just to balance things out. I actually had Point and Marner together on the third line. And I had the Nova Scotia line that you referenced with Reinhart, McDavid, and Stone as the top line. I think that's also a scenario. I'm very high on Reinhart at this point. I'm with you, Nolan. I think it's not a fluke anymore. You have to look at the guy as a legit top nine guy for Team Canada. So if there was a scenario where, yeah, you shift like McKinnon to the right wing, Crosby centers with Marchand, you have the Nova Scotia line, and then your fourth line is maybe like an ultimate shit disturber line. You put Konechny and Hagel on that fourth line, then you have the option of maybe putting Scheifele or Tavares on that third line.
yeah,
I don't know how you feel about that, Riley, but I think it's a little bit more balanced for me.
yeah, I don't know. I think you did a lot of talking and two Leafs ended up on the team. So
Marner was already on the team, man. He was on the top
I
line.
I know I'm messing with you. I don't know. I'd take Verhaeghe over Tavares, but no, I don't. I wouldn't mind that either. I wouldn't mind that either at all.
yeah. At the end of the day, Team Canada, it's hard to mess up the lines as long as you have the best players playing. They're gonna
Yeah,
produce, gonna do good.
Yeah, the only other one that I think if he's healthy, I think he's actually going to be in there is I honestly do think Robert Thomas is going to be there if he's healthy, to be
he
honest.
could be.
I think he's shown that he's like obviously great on both sides of the ice. I think, like I said, Doug Armstrong, I don't want to read too much into things like that sometimes, but I do think that you want to bring those two-way guys into the bottom six. So that's my only concern for Mark Scheifele, to be honest. If I'm really talking about his season so far, he deserves to be in Team Canada, but the defensive aspect, going back to what we talked about, Nolan, is do you really want the guys with maybe some defensive uh liability kind of thing
Yeah,
in that bottom six. So let's move on to the defense and goaltending. I think just based on us being Canadian, being passionate about Team Canada, we'll probably give the same amount of attention to Team USA, but Sweden and Finland, sorry to the fans from Sweden and Finland, we'll probably rip through that a little bit quicker, but still give our thoughts. So defense and goaltending, we can kind of jumble this up into one conversation.
yeah. So obviously, they started with what's regarded as the best D pair in hockey. Devin Taves, Cale Makar already have that elite chemistry in Colorado. Just keep them as the top pair. Taves stay home guy. Lets Makar go up and do his thing. Morrissey having another really good year. Dougie Hamilton, this is where it gets a little questionable, like with guys like Bouchard, Dobson, all in the mix. Then Theodore Petrangelo with the Vegas connection. And then Uyghur, he's played the left side or the right side, so felt like he's pretty versatile as a seventh defenseman. So yeah.
I have no complaints with that. Um,
I
yeah,
have
I really
complaints.
don't.
I
You
have
don't like Dougie
complaints.
Hamilton
I do.
or what?
Wow, I do not like Dougie Hamilton. You read my mind. No,
Yeah.
I don't. I've seen him too many times in big games, and I was about to say the same thing about Bouchard, the same thing about Uyghur. I like Uyghur, but I was telling you this about Riley. Like Riley is like I look at guys at big moments. Like Uyghur had some disastrous moments in the playoffs when he was with Florida against Tampa. I look at Dougie Hamilton, even back to his Carolina days. Like there was some playoff games like that I watched closely, and even talking to Hurricanes fans, like Dougie Hamilton looked slow, out of sorts. He is also now 31. He's going to be a player that I think ages poorly as not the fastest skater. I think Dougie Hamilton's a good player. I will say, I think my 5 locks are in there though, Nolan. I think Devon Taves is a lock. I think McCarr's a lock. I think Josh Morrissey's a lock. With how Josh Morrissey's played the last 2 years, 100%. I think Shea Theodore and Pietrangelo, that cup experience, both being on Vegas. I think if you're trying to keep chemistry and consistency together, again, I hope they don't go too much into the chemistry point of view and also making players happy, because then I think there's a very likely chance that Hyman and Bouchard end up on the roster. So my point of view, I think you're considering Noah Dobson. I think, again, a very biased take here, but I'll own it. You're considering Morgan Riley.
No chance you're considering him.
Explain
He's
to me.
like the 6 guys I left off.
Explain to me how Riley's not a consideration when you have Dougie Hamilton.
Is he going to be in the top 4?
No, he might be the 7th defenseman. PK Subban was the 7th defenseman.
We just talked about the forward lines, and we said that we didn't want the depth players being bad defensively, and you're going to put Morgan Riley in there?
Who from here would you guys?
He's not the secondary. Like, he's not going to be in the lineup per se. I mean, at the end of the day, you have the defensive guys already there. You have Devon Taves. Like,
you know what? Actually, Sanheim has looked really good this year as well. I think
Brandon Montour might even be in consideration for them. I think Noah Dobson might make the team, to be honest. But do you think the Bouchard connection with that, like McDavid, the Edmonton guys, is enough? Like,
I'm not really.
He's had a brutal year. My problem with that is I sound like a hypocrite. I just talked about how Hamilton and his playoff struggles have drove me nuts. Bouchard's looked horrendous at points this season, but he had like the best playoff stretch I've seen from a defenseman in a couple of years. So I don't know.
He looked like he was going to be a big piece for us in the Four Nations, and this year it's just like we've not.
The thing is, for Canada, you don't need Bouchard to be power play 1 defenseman like he is in Edmonton. You have Cale Makar, Morrissey, Theodore, like these guys that can step up.
Yeah.
So Bouchard kind of falls out of favor there in a sense.
I agree with you 100%. So in that perspective, I would probably put Noah Dobson in the pitcher, at least in the top 7. So to me, if I'll respect the fact that you guys like Hamilton to the pitcher, I think it's probably Hamilton or Dobson in that spot, with Weegar and Riley getting consideration. That's my opinion.
I could see it. I like Mackenzie Weegar too. So, I don't know. I really don't know. Judging defensemen on, like, we're all talking about teams' number 1 defensemen here. So it's kind of hard to see what they would be like in other roles, right?
Yeah.
Like Morrissey, I think, could carry our power play. I think obviously Makar's going to, but like Theodore, Pietrangelo, like all these guys like are top defensemen on their team, and Dougie Hamilton's leading their power play. Mackenzie Weegar's leading their power play. So it's like, who do we need to be leading our penalty kill, be our shutdown, deep pairing?
Yeah, right now the penalty kill is probably the 3 leading guys at least are Taves, Morrissey, Pietrangelo. And then you make your pick between Theodore and Makar to be the 4th guy. But I am with you. You probably have to consider that. So a name I would throw out there is Adam Pelech as a consideration, as a hot take.
Mm-hmm. I don't really like that, but
get another Leaf up there in Tanev.
Well, you probably hate that more, Riley. So pick your poison.
No, he's very good defensively. Does what it takes to win. It's Team Canada though, so
yeah.
I think we're in the right spot. Goaltending. Last thoughts on goaltending?
Yeah, went a little bit off the board here. No Binnington. Obviously, there's the connection to the GM, who's an Armstrong, who's going to be the GM of Canada too. So it's, you hope there's no bias there, because I don't think Binnington's that good. But
I agree.
Yeah, so I got Aiden Hill. He's won a cup. Logan Thompson, obviously this year he's 8-1. And Cam Talbot, he's been solid-ish.
Yeah, I would say I think Cam Talbot's numbers have been decent, but then again, he just soaked 5 from the Sharks. So it reminds me that maybe certain guys shouldn't be in the pitcher. But I've been going back and forth. But on my list, I did have Binnington, Aiden Hill, and Logan Thompson.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, I hope you don't have Stuart Skinner because I just can't trust that guy whatsoever.
No,
But
I do think though the prediction versus opinion is a very scary thing, guys. Like if Edmonton and McDavid wants to have his way, he could just be like, "Hey, I'm bringing Bouchard, Hyman, and Skinner with me, and no one's gonna say otherwise."
those goalies are
Yeah.
horrid, man.
Yeah, we need Price back. Just taunting us here.
Yeah, it's not a good situation at all. Like I'm worried about it. So who knows? Like
Yeah.
Disaster.
whoever we're gonna pick, I think there's a chance they could be terrible. Montembeault could be in the discussion. I don't know how he's
Yeah,
done
I
recently.
should say Montembeault, Blackwood, and Kemper should all be guys to like look out for. I mean, Kemper's got a good record right now
Yeah.
in LA, so that's another one to consider. And
Blackwood, it's kind of hard to look at face value stats when he's playing on
San Jose, I agree.
San
Yeah.
Jose. So
Yeah. So I mean the Kemper one's actually interesting because there's some Team Canada, like he's played I believe AAHF, but I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. But again, it's there's a couple things to consider. Two is when is Doughty gonna come back? See,
Yep.
again, talk about I just went into the conversation about how highly Team Canada execs see John Tavares. I'm telling you, Team Canada execs see Drew Doughty in like the highest light possible. So talking about the penalty kill and talking about role players, don't be shocked if Doughty's somehow healthy by January and they at least consider the conversation. I don't think so. I think his timeline's a little too
Yeah.
tight to make that decision. But if there was a scenario where he could be healthy by January, I would not be shocked if Doughty was in that picture.
Because they announced the roster is December 4th. I don't think Doughty's back till what, mid-January like that? Around that time?
That was
So it'd be
the expected timeline. Yeah.
kind
So
of hard
it
to
would
name
be
him and he's not even hasn't even played a game yet.
yeah. No, I'm with you. That's
But
why I wouldn't be shocked, but I'm
yeah.
with you. It's probably going to be a tough timeline.